What is up, everybody? We are back and better than ever for another edition of Brewed Bets presented by Pale Horse Coffee, where the coffee is strong and the bets are stronger. I'm your host, BJ of Sports with BJ, and as always, I'm joined by JTZ, JT of Sports Shift Media. How are we doing today, man?
Doing good. Feeling a little rough after last weekend. Lost some money, but surprisingly, I am in a great mood. It's almost the weekend, and I'm ready to win some of that money back.
I'm with you. I love that. The best thing about your weekend was that you were at the West Virginia game, and that was an amazing game to be at. Came down to a goal line stand on 4th and goal. Love everything about that. Give us a little bit about that atmosphere and what that was like in Morgantown.
It was incredible. I've been to a few massive games in Morgantown, so I've seen the stadium like that before, but the old school Virginia Tech rivalry, that's always going to mean a little bit more. So that place was rocking. It was a lot of fun. And I would like to have not seen it end the way it did. I would have liked to see us pull away instead of kind of let Virginia Tech back in the game. Bad turnover. But at the end of the day, a win's a win. Took the Black Diamond Trophy home for the first time in a long time. So I'll take it. Super hot there. I went through a lot of water. But first, I went through a lot of beer, and then I went through a lot of water.
There it is. Let's keep it honest for a second.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. So, look, that rivalry needs to be a staple in college football. So, in 2025, when the Big 12 goes completely to dust, we would love to have the Mountaineers in the ACC. The details of which are definitely for another show, another time. We're here to talk bets. We're here to talk about making money. So let's recap where we're at right now. Strong weekend last weekend for me, not so for JT. And the problem here, ladies and gentlemen, is JT and I can't have a good week at the same time. Mm-hmm. He's been holding it down for us. And then I had a pretty decent week last week. My first winning week since going undefeated the very first week of college football, which will be week 0. I felt very strong about a lot of them. Aaron Rodgers, again, screwed me over. He could not get a touchdown lead on the Lions into halftime to save his life. As a matter of fact, he went down. He was down 3 at halftime to the Lions. And that is just splendid. Not for what we're doing, but for sarcasm and everything else. It's just splendid. So overall, here's where we stand. We've got a couple things going on here. 13 and 18 overall over here. JT 20-20-2. You can see JT is definitely a volume better, betting a lot more.
But that's one way. That's one way to put it.
We'll put it that way but look, hey, it's working. The unit differential, we're both down right now. And look, this is not how it will be at the end of the year. We didn't finish down last year. We're not going to finish down this year. Some of us just have a bigger hole to crawl out of than others, and you can see who is who, so we won't call anybody out on live television. But that's where we're at. So let's get into it this week. Let's talk about how we're going to right this ship. Let's talk about the way that we're going to get these units back into the positive and money back in our pockets. And we'll start here with the NFL. Or I'm sorry, we're going to start with college this week. We're going to start with college because that's where the bulk of my bets are at. That's where I've been having a little bit more success. So I've got a lot going on for y'all. I'm going to start simple with a little 5.2 game tease. It's going to net you $1.37. I'm going to go Notre Dame. I'm going to give them 5 more points plus 10.5 at Wisconsin. I'm going to take UNC. I'm going to take them down to minus 7.5. I think they're right at 13.5 when I made this bet. So now I'm going to take them down to 7.5 against Georgia Tech. These two are pretty simple for me. I'm also going to include them in another tease a little bit later. Notre Dame plus 10.5 at Wisconsin. We know what kind of game this is going to be because we know what kind of game Wisconsin has to make it to win. This is going to be a game between the tackles. Play action pass is going to be very, very important, but it's going to be a close game. This has field goal game written all over it, and I don't know which side it's going to fall on. I would love for it to fall on Notre Dame's side. No disrespect to Wisconsin. I love them just for a couple of future bets I have. I really need this to fall on Notre Dame's side. I can't see a scenario, though, where we look at the product Notre Dame has put on the field and the product that Wisconsin has put on the field, and Wisconsin wins by 11. It just doesn't line up for that kind of game to me. So I'm going to take the points up in this one, and I'm going to take Notre Dame getting the 10.5 and look to walk away with that. But I got to hit the second bet in order for this tease to win. And I also think this one's a little bit easy. This line, I think, is 100% due to what happened last week against Clemson. And if you were watching that game, I'm sorry. But that means that you weren't watching the UVA game. And if you weren't watching the UVA UNC game, thank you. Don't want you to see what happened to my Who's. But UNC is different on offense. Okay. They might not be able to stop. Well, I can tell you for a fact, they really can't stop anybody, but they're going to score some points. The Georgia Tech Clemson game was an underlier. It was a weird rhythmic game. They called it a delay in the second quarter with 32 seconds left. So they went into almost an hour delay just to bring the teams back onto the field to kneel and then go back for a 15-minute halftime and come back. And you do all the pregame hype, you do all the warm-ups, you're there for 2 hours, you're ready to play the game, and then you get that weird ebbing and flowing of the time. Plus the weather was nasty. And look, Clemson's offense is overrated. We've seen that now consistently for 3 weeks. I'm ready to say that DJ Uiagalelei is not what he was billed to be yet. But that's a big factor in what happened in last week as well. So look for Georgia Tech to not put up the same performance defensively. I don't think that they're going to have a very good offensive output against UNC. UNC's got some dudes on the defensive end, and I like UNC to win this one probably by about 10-14, what the original line was. I just like taking the T's down and saying, hey, give me 8 points. UNC, and I'll walk away with this bet. So that's my first one. And just for the record, I do have a single bet. I believe in this game, this Notre Dame-Wisconsin game being a field goal game so much that I'm also going to single bet Notre Dame plus 5.5, no points at Wisconsin, and pretty sure that's going to be a W as well.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there on that. I was trying to figure out how I wanted to bet that game, and I ended up going a different direction that I'll get to in a second. But with your UNC Georgia Tech bet, I love where you're at there because I think two things happened. The market is overcorrecting in two ways. I think people are oversold on Georgia Tech because of that Clemson game, but I think there's a world of mess in that Clemson locker room, mainly on offense. They've got too many receivers. They're the exact same receiver. They don't have any of the Hunter Renfrow or any of those slot guys. Everybody is 6'3", can't move laterally down the field. So I think they're struggling there. No Travis Etienne, and then DJ's just not Trevor Lawrence. So they're still trying to figure things out. And then UNC, I think a lot of people are still looking at UNC since they haven't really played in a big game since the opener, that people are still thinking about that game, that they came out and struggled. But that was their first game with a bunch of new dudes. They lost a lot of guys to the NFL last year. So they got beat up in that first game against Virginia Tech, but I think they're kind of rolling now after kind of putting it to UVA in the second half of that game last week. Yeah.
And look, I'll just touch on that briefly because I watched the game from start to finish. That's kind of what a UVA fan does. Well, it's what a good UVA fan does. Normal UVA fans will probably just turn it off, but they beat us by 20 points. Okay. If you watch that game, they didn't stop us either. We got in our way. We punted only 3 times. We had a drive inside the 10 that got stalled by a fumble. We also had another drive inside the 15 that got stalled by a fumble and a false start penalty that put us out of field goal range. You add that with the 3 punts, plus the fact that UNC only gave us the ball after they scored or turned it over. UNC had no punts in that game. Mm-hmm. But I go back to those 2 drives. If those 2 drives end in touchdowns, it's a different game. And let's not forget, it was 24-7 with less than 7 minutes to go in the second quarter, and UVA walks out of that first half up 28-24. I don't think UNC was a better team. I think UNC got better breaks. And for some reason, UVA forgot how to tackle. Really, really badly. So I don't look at that as a slight to UVA. A lot of positives came from that game for me. Honestly, on the offensive side of the ball, Brennan Armstrong set a UVA single game record for career passing yards a single game passing record for UVA with 574. He's also leading the country.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, he's also leading the country in yards per game. So
he's also leading the country in Pro Football Focus grade for all quarterbacks in the country. Pro Football Focus, he's number 1, which is pretty impressive.
And someone made a comment to me today, why is Sam Howell in the conversation for Heisman, but Brennan Armstrong's not? I want to put a squash to that real quick because Sam Howell was in the Heisman conversation last year and balled out. That's why Sam Howell's in the Heisman conversation. If Brennan Armstrong stays on this train that he's on right now, I guarantee you he'll be on the Heisman watch next year. So let's just pump the brakes on that. It's not a biased thing. Sam Howell's just done more with a bigger body of work. So let's calm down a little bit. Let's talk about some of your bets, though, because this is not UVA hour. This is Brewed Bets, and we're trying to make some money. So stay away from betting UVA. And what do you got, JT?
So I'm going to start out in that same game that you were talking about a little bit ago, Wisconsin, Notre Dame. I'm going first half under 23.5. I wish I could have got it at that 24.5. That's a better football number. But I'm still going to take it because I still think I think both teams are in the single digits in the first half. They're going to feel each other out. Both offenses aren't great. Notre Dame's still struggling with some offensive line issues. Wisconsin up front is going to be tough for them. They're going to have a tough time moving the ball. And on the other side, Wisconsin really hasn't shown anything. We watched that Penn State game to open up the season, and they could not get anything going against that Penn State defense. Notre Dame gets after you. They're top 20 in the country in sack percentage. So every time that Graham Mertz drops back, he's going to have to worry about getting taken down in the backfield. I do worry a little bit about Notre Dame's run defense. They give up about 150 rushing yards per game. So that could be a problem. But I think still Wisconsin's going to try to slow this game out of the gates and maybe bring it on in the second half. So I like the first half under. And at game time, it's expected to be 13-mile-an-hour winds with rainy conditions. So that does make for a lower total game.
Absolutely.
And then second, I've got two picks in the Texas A&M Arkansas game. I'm going Texas A&M -3.5 and Arkansas team total under 21. The Texas A&M's defense is nasty, and they've really taken control so far this year with their front seven. That Colorado game, they struggled on offense all game long, but they still were able to hold Colorado to think, what was it, 7 points? They won that game 10-7. So with the new quarterback, Zach Calzada, in that Colorado game, he looked a little rough because he was not expecting to play. He was the backup for a reason. He needed some time to get into the game and get going. Last week, he goes up against New Mexico, and they put it to him, I think, 34-0. So I think he's ready for this week. And then on the other side, Arkansas, they're a little propped up because of that Texas game, but Texas is soft up front, and Arkansas came out and punched them in the mouth and just ran down their throat for the entire first quarter. I looked it up. They're beating opponents 24-0 in the first quarter. Most of it was in that game against Texas. So now if you're going up against a really good Texas A&M team that has high hopes for this season, how are they going to handle adversity when they're not just destroying teams right out the gate? I don't think it goes well for them. They're not going to score much points against this defense, and Texas A&M wins by a bunch.
Yeah, I love that. Everything you just said is really what people were saying about these two teams individually when the season started, and now they're meeting, and we get to put money on it. I love it.
Yep. So I guess I will go I'll give two more here quick before I bounce it back to you.
Okay. Finish up that line. Finish up that whole line.
Okay. So I'll go Louisville -1.5. They're going up against Florida State, and Florida State has looked really bad. They lost to Jackson State. They lost the Notre Dame game. But if you look at their offensive line, coming into the year, their offensive line coach said that they had 7 guys that could play minutes this year. 7 guys that he really trusted. They have 4 that aren't playing in Saturday's game. So do the math, and that leaves you with 3 guys that he truly believes in. So they don't have a full 5 guys that are ACC quality linemen, and now they got to go up against Louisville, who their offense runs fast. They're top 20 in tempo. They're going to be up and down the field. So if Florida State has to be on the field a lot, if that defense is on the field a lot, you've got to expect the offense to keep up to try to stay in the game. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. So Louisville -1.5. I'm kind of scared with why this line is where it's at, but I don't know. It started at 4.5, and it's moving in the wrong direction. It's helping me out, but I'm just worried on why everyone's betting that.
Yeah. Listen, I love that there's 7 that he trusts, but they're still awful, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, they still got beat up in that Notre Dame game, so it
and
wasn't great.
in the Jackson State, I mean, there's just nothing solid. And poor Mackenzie Milton, man, he had the world in his hand before he tore basically his whole left leg, and now he's dealing with this crap. I
Hmm.
I feel bad for him most of all, but yeah, I don't think I don't think you have any problem covering that at all this week. Let's talk
Yeah.
about Mizzou though.
So Missouri's going up against Boston College. Phil Jerkovic, who is from a high school close to me, he was Boston College quarterback. He was at Notre Dame, transfers to BC. He is out for the season now, so they're down to their second string quarterback. So their offense isn't as explosive as what they had hoped it would be, and then their defense is awful. 108th in passing explosiveness allowed, so they allow a bunch of big chunk plays. And 108th, just remember that number, and then I'm going to give you the 3 teams that they've played so far. They've played Temple, who was on their backup quarterback. They played UMass, who was also on their backup quarterback, and they played against Colgate. So they allowed a ton of big plays against 3 terrible teams.
Hmm.
There's a lot of question marks with Missouri too, that specifically on the defensive side of the ball as well. But I think that I'm drawing a blank on what their coach's name is, but he's a good coach, and he's going to have Missouri ready to play to try to get an out of conference win before they go into SEC play. So give me Missouri -1.5. What do you think?
Again, another pick that I don't think has any trouble covering, only because I've seen Boston College
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen Missouri. And if you look at it's a small body of work. I'm only one person. I've only seen one game of each. But from what I've seen and the product they put on the field, and then when you go down the list on the depth chart, doesn't look good for Boston College. I love that bet. The reason I didn't put it in, it was one of the ones I had. I removed it. It seems like whenever I bet against an ACC team, that's when they decide to play their best football. So I just stayed away from Boston College completely. But I love that. I'm more interested and have more to say on this next pick, though.
Okay. We'll get right into it. Michigan -19.5 going up against Rutgers. Depending on where you're at, there's different lines for this game. It's anywhere between 18 to 20. But I love Michigan -19.5 mainly because I don't believe in Rutgers.
Mm-hmm.
They are number 1 in turnovers this year. Their defense creating turnovers, and because of that, they also have the best starting position for their offense all year long. And their offense still rates outside the top 100 in most categories. So their defense puts them in perfect position, and they're still struggling to score points. And then you look at Michigan; they have not committed a turnover all year long through 3 games. They've played some weaker opponents, so maybe that doesn't mean anything. But Rutgers lives off turnovers. It's a very lucky stat. Game to game, it doesn't translate well. So I think Michigan takes care of the football, keeps themselves in good position all game long, and just ends up being too much for them and wins this by 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Yeah. So you don't trust Rutgers. I don't trust John Harbaugh. I don't trust Michigan. I don't trust anything in Ann Arbor when it comes to football. This seems like the prototypical game. They have 2 every year, right? One's going to be a big game against Ohio State where they probably compete for the first half and give you hope, and then Michigan just becomes Michigan. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to give you another game where they go, what are we doing? And I feel like this could be that game. It just, when you look at who they have on the schedule and you look at everything, if you're looking for one head-scratching performance by Michigan, I see it could possibly be this one. I saw that line too, and I just think if you look at John Harbaugh's body of work and you look at questions versus certainties, I feel like there's been more questions in his career at Michigan than there have been certainties. And that to me is enough to say, I don't trust giving Michigan 2 touchdowns or more against anybody. So I stayed away from that game. I like what you said. Look, it should be a no-brainer, right? You should fade Rutgers all year long, right?
I think that, so yeah, their 3-0 is definitely fake. And I agree with you that Michigan's going to have one of those head scratcher games. When I looked at the schedule, I think it's more either what game at Nebraska, because a lot of people are down on Nebraska, but I think that they could give them a game having to go to there. And then at Maryland, Talia Tagovailoa, I've seen him play first week of the season against my Mountaineers. I think those are the two games that you could see Michigan rolling in with a really good record, like we've seen not in the past few years, but maybe like 5 to 10 years ago, where they had a good season all year long, and then towards the end, in late October, early November, they have one of those hiccup games. So I think a lot of people are on Rutgers this week, but I think that game is coming later on in the season.
Yeah, I'm not in on Rutgers. Let me ask you a question though. So, if Nebraska or Maryland did beat Michigan, would it surprise you?
No.
That's my point.
Yep.
That's my point here, is that Nebraska, we were both on Nebraska at the beginning of the season. We thought that this was Scott Frost's year. He had a good amount of returners. He had some good weapons he recruited, a good transfer portal season. And then they went out against Illinois first game of the year at home. Or no, that was in Champaign. But laid a complete and total dud. The very next week, Illinois got beat by 30 at UVA. So, so Nebraska is not the Nebraska yet that we thought they were going to be. And then you mentioned Maryland. Look, Maryland's a decent ball club. And like you said, neither one of those teams beating Michigan would surprise us. And I don't think Michigan loses this game. The surprise, I think, would be, how did Michigan only beat Rutgers by 10?
Yeah.
Right. So I stayed away from it. But again, if I stayed away from it, history has told us that it'll probably hit.
We'll see. I mean, I was terrible last week, so it's always 1 week that one of us is going to struggle. But my last pick, before I hand it back to you, I'm just going to there's not much explanation needed for this. Ohio plus 14.5. Northwestern should not be a 2-touchdown favorite to more than about 10 teams in all of FBS. I think it's like Akron, UTEP. There was a bunch of teams I was thinking about of like, who would I really actually believe Northwestern is a 2-touchdown favorite against? And I don't think it's Ohio. I think Ohio can compete with them into the fourth quarter and keep this game close. So for that reason, that's my pick. Not many stats behind that. It's just fading Northwestern.
Yeah, absolutely. And didn't they go up against Duke and get smacked too?
Duke at least stayed in that game. I don't know who ended up winning that, because I can tell you that on a Saturday afternoon, I was not tuning into Northwestern.
Yeah, I was just trying to support your stat, because you said there's a couple of teams that you think Northwestern should be a couple touchdown favorites by. There's 10. I would have thought this year Duke would have been one of them, and they were not. So I'm fading them as well.
All right. So you have another teaser for us, correct?
I do. I've got a big one here. I've got a 10.7 game tease for the people, and 2 of them we've already discussed. So I'm going to take 10 extra points. I'm going to take UNC down to -2.5. We've discussed that one already. And I'm also going to take another game that we talked about here. Where is it? Oh, no, I took Notre Dame out. All right. So that's the only game we've already discussed. So I'm taking UNC down an extra 5 points.
Well, I talked about Louisville, but
yeah, I thought I had Notre Dame in this one, but I guess I took them out because I don't see them. So UNC -2.5, taking that 10 points down there. Let's go up to the top. Maryland versus Kent State. I'm taking 10 points down. I'm going to take Maryland -4.5 against Kent State. They're at home, and it's Kent State. If Maryland can't beat them by 5, why are we even playing football? Purdue versus Illinois. I've had the ability to watch Illinois twice this year. I watched them against Nebraska in the opener, and even though they won, it wasn't impressive. I watched them against UVA and saved their touchdown drive out of halftime. Not much there. Purdue at least gives me a little bit of something. Purdue's got some competitiveness to them this year in the Big Ten. Obviously not going to be a top-tier Big Ten team, but enough to be middle of the pack. I do not think Illinois is middle of the pack, and this is taken down to 1.5, which is basically a money line game, right? So I'm going to take Purdue -1.5. I'm also going to go to Iowa. I know Iowa, this opened up at 23.5. Iowa is not going to beat anybody by 23.5 just because of the style that they play, right? But it is Colorado State. They do have to travel to Iowa, which isn't a deal, but it is a hostile environment. Iowa's a great place to watch a football game. It is a home field advantage. I'll give them 5 points for that. I don't like them at 23.5, but I do like them as a 2-touchdown favorite. So I tease that down 10 points to just under that at 13.5. I'll roll with that, and I think that's pretty safe. We talked about the Florida State game. You took Louisville over to win the game -1.5. I'm going to take them plus the points because I think they're going to win the game outright, and it's just a safer bet for me. So I'm going to take Louisville plus 8.5, even though it's at Florida State, at Doak Campbell. Who cares? Let's go to another game. We just talked about Clemson last week laying what some would consider an egg against Georgia Tech. I don't think that Clemson laid an egg. I think it was a weird game. A weird, we already talked about all of those things, but this was a game that when the schedule came out, everyone circled as a big matchup in the ACC. NC State traveling to Death Valley to take on Clemson. Okay. Clemson has not had very good offensive outputs this year. NC State has. Clemson has played decent defense this year. I look at the Georgia game. They played amazing defense. Georgia has a good offense. They did play amazing defense. And for that reason, I think that this game stays relatively close. I think NC State could even win. I don't know how you see what Clemson put on the field this year, especially last week, and make them 30-point favorites almost. That doesn't make any sense to me. So 10-point favorites. So give me 10 points. Give me NC State plus 19.5. Just don't get beat by 3 touchdowns and we're golden, baby. Love it. Michigan, Rutgers. I too bet on this game, but I took it the other way. I took it down. Like I said, I can see them winning this game by 10, 11, 12 points. If more, great. We both win. But I'm taking them down to minus 10.5. And then we touched on the UNC game already. I'm taking them down to minus 2.5. And that's going to net you, ladies and gentlemen, $420. $100 bet wins you $420 on that. And I'm very confident in that tease. Where am I wrong, JT?
So, I mean, I'm really with you there the entire way. Purdue looked good against Notre Dame. Even though Notre Dame ended up covering, Purdue put up a good fight. I mean, I'm right there with you on everything. The only thing is, like, if Clemson does figure it out, like, I mean, they always have that game where, like, everyone's against them, and then Dabo just comes out and throttles somebody. So that does worry me a little bit. I think is DJ from North Carolina?
Uiagalelei? That I don't know. For some reason, I feel like he's from Georgia.
Okay. So then for some reason, I wanted to say somebody is playing in this game, traveling back home, having a bunch of family there. But no, I love everything about that. You get a great value at plus 420 for games that I think you're pretty safe there with all of those.
Where is John Bosco? Oh, it's California. That's where he's from. He played at St. John Bosco.
Okay.
Yeah. So look, you made a good point. Clemson might figure it out. And I almost didn't take this bet because of that. But then I sat back and I thought, what if Clemson does figure it out this game? And what I said to myself was, well, if Clemson figures it out this game, then we get the game everyone thought we were going to get when we circled it on our calendar. And that is not a 20-point victory by Clemson. It's a closely fought game that Clemson probably pulls out because they just have better talent. And it's at Clemson at night. But it shouldn't be a blowout. I'm hoping NC State figures something out and Clemson continues to struggle because I would really love to win this bet.
But definitely.
But we'll see what happens. It'll be fun to watch either way. And I love the value at the 420 for just 7 games. Yeah,
definitely. I'm with you there. So hopefully that's 2 teaser wins then. And I have a third teaser to throw at everyone. So I'll throw that one up and talk about it a little bit. I'm going against your Cavaliers to start. It's a Friday night game. I'm taking Wake Forest plus 11. These are all plus 7 points, by the way.
Okay.
So it's 7 points on a 5-game teaser. Wake Forest plus 11. I think that both of these teams, they're both, I believe, top 25 in tempo. Like, I feel like this game is going to be an up and down game where both teams score. you might have a little bit more insight than me. You talked about it a little bit there, but I just feel like Wake Forest comes out and competes and keeps this game from 7 to 10 points. Still think UVA wins, but I think it's a single-digit game. You agree with that, or you think UVA kind of gives it to them?
Yeah. So the only thing that scares me about that bet is first of all, it's on a short week. So that's a lot of people will say, oh man, that's a tough turnaround. Not for athletes, not for people playing at the level these kids are playing at. And again, they're kids. So they can go the next day if they had to. I think the short week actually works in a favor to help them forget what happened and gives them an opportunity to get back on the field. And it takes a day away for them to lose their hunger to fix what they did. And again, I already said it. They were in that UNC game. I mean, they put up 21 unanswered points at the end of the half within 7 minutes. They can score the ball. They can go up and down. And a lot of the points that UNC got was really just due to poor tackling. Great scheming. But it put people in a position where make a tackle or we score, and they didn't make the tackle. I don't know. My heart tells me that UVA probably loses this game. It's just something inside of me that it doesn't feel right. But my head says that UVA probably runs away with this one because it's an opportunity to take on another offense that just lit them up and make a statement. But my heart says you made a good bet.
Thank you. Second one, I'm going Kansas plus 22.5. This is another kind of just principle pick that Duke should never be favored by. They're favored by 2 touchdowns, so I'm taking it up, and I'm saying that they won't win by 3 touchdowns. Kansas is bad, but Duke is also bad. This is the toilet bowl. There's other worse games to watch, but this one's going to be pretty bad. So give me Kansas plus 3 touchdowns. Over to a game that you just talked about, Colorado State and Iowa under 51.5. In a game where a team is favored by 23.5 points, it's tough to see that, like, Colorado State isn't going to be expected to score many points at all. The real expectation here is how many points is Iowa going to put up. I don't think that they would ever get to like 40s, 50s in this game. They're going to take their foot off the gas and play their style and probably win this like in the range of 35, like mid 30s. And then you're asking Colorado State to put up like 17 points. And I just don't see that happening against this Iowa defense. So give me the under 51.5. In my Mountaineers game, they're going up against Oklahoma. I had the stat pulled up earlier, but I forgot to write it down. In their last 8 times since joining the Big 12, playing Oklahoma, West Virginia has never won, and this has gone over the total in 7 of the 8 appearances. There's more times in this series since joining the Big 12 that they were closer to 100 than they were closer to 50. So you're giving me 49 points. This Oklahoma team could probably, if they figure things out, they could put up 49 by themselves. West Virginia's never schemed well against Oklahoma, even when they have good defenses. Oklahoma has their number. I don't think West Virginia has this game very close. I think Oklahoma wins by a couple touchdowns, and this is more in the high 50s, low 60s range for points. So give me the over. And then Iowa State going up against Baylor in Big 12 play. They were a 7-point favorite, so I got it all the way down to -0. It's a pick 'em, and Baylor hasn't played anybody. Their schedule has been a cakewalk. So Iowa State wins this one with ease, and that game nets you. That is plus 582. So I like every game on that schedule. And I think that's an easy way to pick up almost 6 units.
Yeah, I will never, for the remainder of this year, and probably the remainder of all years, bet on Oklahoma. They screwed me in the first week. I've watched them. So for those of you that don't know, I don't know that I've ever disclosed this on the show. I am an Oklahoma fan. My best friend since 5th grade is from Oklahoma. So I watch all the games. I know all the recruiting. I know all the stats. And I also know what happened against Nebraska last week. And Oklahoma is the most mysterious team of national relevancy, in my opinion, in college football. They can
Mm-hmm.
go out the very first week and put up 60, and then they could come into the Nebraska game, go down the field on their opening drive in a minute and 37 seconds, score a touchdown, and then continue to set the first half struggling to get in field goal range and win a game. What was it, 31-29?
Yep.
Like they're baffling. They always have been. They always will be. I do like that number, though. I think if anything, West Virginia scores and wakes them up, and
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma has to score to stay in it early. I can see that happening. I can see Oklahoma coming out flat in this game.
That's one thing. West Virginia, even in bad years where they didn't have great offenses, I think in the last 8 years, I want to say they've put up at least 20 points 6 out of the 8 years. So some of those are Holgerson years that, I mean, those were great offenses. But even with like the Skylar Howard year and Clint Trickey year where the offenses weren't quite as elite, they still got like into the 20s, 30s, 40s against this OU defense. So, yeah, I think both teams get into at least the 20s. Oklahoma could score a lot more than that. And I think the one thing that baffles me, I know West Virginia is going through some issues with the fans talking about wanting to play the backup quarterback. There is actually a large portion of the Oklahoma fan base which is questioning whether Spencer Rattler is the right guy, or if they should go to Caleb Williams, whatever the backup's name is. He was the number one quarterback recruit last year. It just amazes me that no matter what school you root for, the backup quarterback is just always the favorite person on the team.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because until that quarterback steps on the field, all we have are accolades. No one's ever going to say, we just landed the nation's number one quarterback, but he has accuracy issues. No one's ever going to say that. So all you're going to read is positive, positive, positive. And until they get on the field,
you just
don't know. You don't know. And then when he gets on the field and makes one mistake, everyone's going to want the next guy and the next guy. Every college team should carry 17 quarterbacks. Just so the fans can be happy. Yep. But dude, I love that bet. And the one reason I do like it is because even if Oklahoma comes out and doesn't play well, the one thing you can guarantee with Oklahoma, you're going to score on them. You're going to score on them. So if Oklahoma wins this game, which I think we both agree, unfortunately they do, they're going to have to score to do so, because West Virginia is not a slouch offensively. So, over 49 seems pretty. You're asking me to say both teams put up 25 points? I can see that happening easily. Yeah. So, is it on me? Is this the last bets of the night?
So I have 3 individual bets, but well, we're on to the NFL, so you can go first, and then I'll wrap it up.
Okay, so another game here, another tease, 4 games. I'm taking 6 points. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, y'all can play with these to make them what you want. The beautiful thing about not having to deal with bookies anymore and actually dealing with a sports book is that the tease numbers aren't set. It used to be a 2-game tease got you 3 games. You kept going up and up in intervals, and you had to pay some juice and whatever. You still have to do that, but you can tease these as many as you want, and it'll change the odds for you. So you could go to 7 if you'd like. You can go in half-point intervals. I took this as a 4-game tease, getting 6 points, and I basically turned all these games into pick'ems for the NFL. Cardinals and Jags. I don't think there's anything really to say here. I took the Cardinals down to 1.5. Does anyone out there disagree that the Cardinals won't beat the Jaguars by more than a point and a half? I don't think so. Let's move on. Ravens, Lions. We just saw what the Green Bay Packers did to the Lions in a half of football. Keep in mind, the Lions were winning at halftime, and then the Green Bay Packers came out and said, you shall not score. And that's all you need to know. They're going up against the Ravens. Good luck stopping them. If you couldn't stop Aaron Rodgers in that offense, good luck stopping Lamar Jackson. I took them down to 1.5.
The one thing that scares me, he did sit out practice today, so that I like
tired.
It's still early in the week that he could practice tomorrow. That was just something that caught my eye today when I was sitting to work.
It could be rest. That could be the NFL's version of NBA players taking a night off. Who knows? I don't think there's a chance that he doesn't go. And I'll be honest with you, even if he doesn't go, I still like the Ravens to win this game. The Lions just don't have anything to offer. at all, except for Jared Goff and whatever that means. So then we're going to go again. So the number one rule in betting, we've talked about it 2 weeks in a row. I went 50%. Once I bet with my team and won. Another time I bet with my team and lost. So I'm going to bet the same game my team is playing in, but I'm going to bet against them here. I'm going to take the Bills down from minus a touchdown to -1, hosting my Washington football team. I love Taylor Heineke for what he is from our area. I'm down here in Virginia, ODU. I got to watch him play and set records with Zach Pascal. Now they're both in the NFL. I am not sold on Taylor. To be honest with you, I don't think he's the answer. And a lot of Washington fans do. Whether or not he's the answer is neither here nor there. The answer is this defense and this secondary right now can't stop anybody and get a pass rush to save their ever-loving lives. And you've got a quarterback in Josh Allen that's got weapons out the wazoo and legs who will look to run more than Daniel Jones did. I don't see Washington in this game at all. Maybe by halftime, it might be a 7-point game, but I think this is a 14-plus point victory for the Bills, and I don't think it's really anything else to say. The hardest one I had here, I've had the pleasure of watching Justin Herbert not only play against my football team, but I watched him very intently last year because I watched the NFL via the red zone, and they show you scoring plays from every game. And the Chargers are in the red zone a lot, okay? So they can score. They can score. What it comes down to is whose defense do you trust, right? Whose defense do you trust? If you go back and you watch the Washington versus Chargers game, they didn't really stop the Washington football team. The Washington football team stopped the Washington football team. If you go back last week, another shootout where they're not really stopping anybody, you're going to give me the most prolific offense in the NFL with a quarterback who doesn't lose in September. That would be Patrick Mahomes. Look it up. He doesn't lose in September. I'm going to take them down to a -0.5 point. Basically a pick'em game because you can't win by 0.5 point. So if KC wins by a point, we all win. And that bet right there is going to net you $240. $100 bet get you $240. $10 bet get you $24. Take it and run with it. What say you, JT?
I like those. I mean, it's all some of the best teams in the league. Great quarterbacks. That one against the Chargers does scare me a little bit. But at the end of the day, you have to trust Patrick Mahomes. I'm looking here on Action Network. It looks like percentage of money on these games. I mean, Chiefs are at 80% of the money. Cardinals are at 93% of the money. Bills at 71 and Ravens at 70. So you've just got a lot of money coming in on all these teams. And that's even at their original spread. So I mean, a lot of people believe in them to win the football game. It's in the NFL, it's always tough because in college, you know when teams are going to go in and win games against lesser opponents. But everyone in the NFL is professionals. But I still like these games against these opponents for everybody to win.
Well, hopefully it's a clean slate for me this week.
Yep, we're going for. I don't know how many picks we have on the board total, but like 20-0, whatever, however many total games we have, we're just not going to lose a single one.
The bad part about it is that might sound like an exaggeration to people, but it's probably not. We're probably close to 20.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, by the end of Saturday, I will probably end up with 20 myself.
Yeah.
I have 11 total, so technically we have 15.
Okay.
So, yeah, getting close. That's with a bunch of teasers, too.
That's fine. Technicalities are overrated.
Yeah, so I've got 3 NFL bets. I'm going Colts +5 against the Titans. There's a lot of people on the Titans. I'm looking at it here. The game opened up. The Titans were a 1-point underdog. They are now up to 5.5-point favorites. So I'm not sure why that is. I know that the Colts are probably going with their backup quarterback, Jacob Eason, but the Titans defense has shown nothing that they don't want to stop any quarterbacks. So if you're going to be playing in one of your first NFL games, I would like it to be against the Titans defense. So you're telling me that two teams that are pretty close together at every other aspect of the game, then the only difference is quarterback, but you're going up against a bad defense. I like that. And when I look at it here, I would like to look at percentage of money for NFL games just because I think it means a lot when you're looking at where the money is going. And where's it at? 80% of bets are on the Titans, but only 56% of the money. So a lot of the heavy bettors are on the Colts. And for that reason, I'm going to ride with them. And I think that's an easy win. I think they can win the game outright, but I get plus 5 points.
Yeah.
Second one is Dolphins plus 4.5 going up against. Why did I not write down who they're playing? The Raiders. This line just made no sense to me. Why are the Raiders only 3.5 point favorites? They actually opened up as 1 point underdogs. So Vegas is telling you that an undefeated team that went and beat the Ravens, went and beat the Steelers, is opening up as a 1 point underdog against a Dolphins team that has looked okay, but they're without Tua. Jacoby Brissett is starting for them. He's not a terrible quarterback, but why they opened up as a favorite makes no sense to me. But when I looked more into it, the Raiders' wins might be a little fraudulent because a lot of people are praising Derek Carr for going in and dominating two good defenses. But the Ravens' defense is ranked 17th right now, and the Steelers, they are somewhere in the 20s. Both teams' defense, they're not the defenses that you expect them to be. The Dolphins have a top 10 ranked defense in most statistical categories. They turn you over. So I think the Dolphins go in and give the Raiders their first loss of the season. And then my last one is Jets-Broncos under 41.5. Very low total, but if you look into the stats, these are two teams that are just born to play unders. Both of their game totals in the first 2 weeks didn't hit 40. So yeah, you're getting at 41.5. Both teams haven't reached that total yet. The Jets haven't even been able to crack 5 yards per play. 5 yards is not much to ask for, and they have not been able to do it. That offensive line is really bad. Without Mekhi Becton, I might just fade the Jets every single week. And then Teddy Bridgewater, I thought this stat was a little interesting. The under in Teddy Bridgewater's games is 30, 20, and 1. So it hits at a 60% clip. The under does. So in betting terms, 60% might not seem like a lot, but in betting terms, 60% is. Like you're a good gambler if you win 56% of the time. So 60% on top of the other stats for these teams. Broncos #1 ranked defense in the league, so they should just dominate the Jets and not really allow them to score anything. So I'll take the under the total.
Yeah, I like that. I like the Dolphins pick. I feel like there's been, and look, I'm not trying to do any hot take here. I'm just trying to tell you what my eyes have seen. The Raiders are Derek Carr and Darren Waller. And Darren Waller has yet to go up against a defense that can throw out somebody to shade him and to cover him one-on-one like Xavier Howard, right? I think that's the difference in the game. I'm going to be very interested. This is going to be a game where we find out who the Raiders are. If the Raiders go out and beat the dog crap out of Dolphins, then they're everything we thought they've been through the first 2 weeks. But now we're finally going up against a defense that has someone in coverage that can stick with Darren Waller and can take that option away on most routes. What are you going to do? They're not going to have Josh Jacobs. He's out, if I'm not mistaken. Or
they have a few guys out there. Josh Jacobs is out for a while. They're missing a linebacker, some linemen. They're missing a lot.
Yeah, so there's not much there other than Darren Waller. And look, it could just be that Darren Waller is the new Aaron Hernandez or the new Gronkowski. That he could be that good. I don't think that anyone could say that he's not good. I just don't know if he's good enough to carry an entire team as the #1 option, really the only passing option for an entire year, especially when you get up against a defense. And like I said, a cornerback like Xavier Howard. I'm saying his name. That's Xavier Howard, right? Over there. Yeah, Xavier Howard. I love that pick. I love it. Love it.
Awesome. So that's our picks for the week. You want to go down here? Let me throw this up. You want to go down through the picks one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. So we'll wrap it up here a little bit. All right. So we'll go through Jake's picks. In the college football world, we got Wisconsin, Notre Dame, first half under 23.5, Texas A&M minus 3.5, Arkansas team total under 21.5, Louisville minus 1.5 against Florida State, Missouri minus 1.5, Michigan minus 19.5, and Ohio plus 14.5. We've got a 7.5 game tease for 582. Wake Forest plus 11 Friday night against UVA. Kansas plus 22.5 against Duke. Colorado State, Iowa under 51.5. West Virginia, Oklahoma State over 49. And Iowa State teasing them down to a straight pick'em game. They're getting 0, giving 0. Iowa State to win. His NFL bets this week: Colts plus 5 in a tease. Dolphins plus not 41.5, plus 4.5.
Yep.
And Jets Broncos under the 41.5.
If I can get Dolphins plus 41.5, I will gladly take that.
Gladly take it. I don't think it'll be positive money. You might have to bet 1,000 to win 50. But yeah, good bets there. And then over on mine, we got a 5.2 game tease. $1.37. Notre Dame plus 10.5 at Wisconsin. UNC minus a touchdown and half a point at Georgia Tech. Then a 10.7 game tease. Maryland minus 4.5 at Kent State. Purdue minus 1.5 versus Illinois. Iowa minus 13.5 versus Colorado State. Louisville plus 8.5 against Florida State. NC State plus 19.5 against Clemson. Michigan minus 10.5 versus Rutgers. UNC minus 2.5 against Georgia Tech. Single game straight bet, Notre Dame plus 5.5 at Wisconsin. And then wrapping it up with a $240, plus $2.40 on a 6.4 game tease. Cardinals minus 1.5 against Jacksonville. Ravens minus 1.5 against whoever it is they're playing. The Bills minus 1 versus Washington, and the Chiefs minus a half a point versus the Chargers. Whew. Take a breath, relax a little bit. A lot there. But hey, that's going to do it for us here on Brewed Bets, presented by Pale Horse Coffee. Remember to check them out, palehorsecoffee.com. Use promo code Brewed Bets. Save 10% off your online order for pickup or delivery. For JT, I'm BJ with Sports with BJ. Remind you, always bet responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER for all your problems. Enjoy the games. Happy betting. We'll see y'all next week.